Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 20th November 2020. The first article for discussion is India's mask of economic liberalism is off. In this article, we will try to analyze Mr. Jaishankar's statement with regard to free trade agreements. You know that India did not join RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which represents 30% of global trade and has 15 countries, which is going to major multilateral agreement, trade agreement after WTO. You know, WTO is more or less dead with regard to global trade is concerned today, and global trade is expected to grow through these multilateral arrangements. In this context, Mr. Jaishankar's statement on free trade agreements states like this. They are pushing subsidized products into countries such as India. And second is, they are also a reason for deindustrialization. In this scenario, if we observe free trade agreements and globalization and how India got benefited from this, we have certain points to take home. India is the largest beneficiary of the free trade agreements or globalization. How can we say that? Indian economy grew almost close to double digit. And second, poverty is reduced a lot. According to Arvind Panagaria, poverty between 2004-2005 to 2011-12 is reduced from 40% to 20%. No doubt inequalities have raised, but India also is able to significantly reduce poverty. It means it is able to improve the material well-being of the people. And the second thing is, India manufacturing woes or problems, they are more related to its competitiveness and structural issues. So the problem is India not able to acknowledge this and address this. Rather than deindustrialization is caused by globalization is a very simple narrative of the problem. The bigger issue is India has to look inward and has to increase its competitiveness, industrial efficiency, address the structural problems. And not joining the RCEP, if we see. During COVID-19, most of the economies went into recession. India is not an exception for that. In this scenario, RCEP is going to be the growth engine of this region and the global level at large. So, India will be pushed to margins. India on one side is expecting to be a part of global value chains. In this scenario, not joining these multilateral trade arrangements is more a wrong or a mistake. That's how we can put it as. On the other side, India appears to be more moving towards protectionism. It is there in being vocal for local, or not signing the free trade agreements or moving out of the free trade agreements, or lack of regulatory certainty. All these things proves that India is more becoming protectionist. Atmanirbhar Bharat, every time India is stating that it is not against free trade and globalization, but still it has those overtones, we can say it that way. Majorly RSS agenda, it revolves around Swadeshi. Is government is going through this hidden agenda of Swadeshi or vocal for local, this has to be observed. Curbing on air bigotry. This article is in the context of Tablighi Jamaat event. After this Tablighi Jamaat event happened in Delhi, many of the air channels, news channels, have projected it as voluntary super spreading program of COVID-19. Finally, it took the communal overtones, hatred towards one community, etc. So these kind of messages are very divisive. How to handle this? Do we have a framework to handle this or not? That is what is the Supreme Court's question to Union government is. Will Supreme Court provide an opportunity for introspection to the government, or government will take it as an opportunity to curb the freedom of media that has to be observed? So here the author is saying is, any kind of regulation that has to be brought on electronic media or TV news channels, it has to differentiate between free speech and hate speech. The regulation shall not go beyond that to an extent where government can cripple the freedom of speech. So, differentiating between free speech and hate speech, that has to be the guiding principle to bring in any regulation on electronic media. That is the take home point for you. The next is a world in chaos and a moment of truth. Informational autocracy is the word used over here. What does that mean? Today we are being guided more and more by the information. Is this information is accurate or is it a fake? Do we have mechanisms to differentiate accurate information from fake news? No. So this fake news, information asymmetry, all these are causing a great danger to democracy. So let us see it carefully. In the United States of America today, Mr. Trump is known to be the leader of the fake news. And Mr. Trump's non-acceptance of the elections, they are putting grave danger to the oldest democracy in the world. And second, in the United States of America itself, the previous elections are said to be manipulated by psychometric analysis brought in by Cambridge Analytica. This has made people to lose trust on the elections itself. And the third thing is, if you come to UK, there is a challenge of Brexit, which is also voted in the midst of fake news or else information asymmetry. On the other side, France, which has given the foundational principles of equity, justice, equality, everything. This France is also going through a phase of terror. So, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these elements are gaining strength in Europe today, and Europe is getting divided like never before. We can see the right wing growing in the midst of this particular rhetoric. And coming to India, the Jammu and Kashmir appears superficially calm, but deep inside there is a great divide. Majority and minority of the population are divided like never before. Today I was reading some article which it says that majority in India have a minority mindset, and the existing political parties are able to exploit and seed this in the mind of the majority. The minority mindset will be sense of insecurity will be there because of their numbers. In India, more than 80% of the institutions though are being occupied by the majority, still they have a minority mindset, and it is consciously created that they are the victims, majority are the victims. That is where the divisions are becoming more dangerous and minorities are becoming insecure in India. So the way forward over here is we need to present the facts, differentiate the facts from the fakes. That is, the time has come up over here. A small comment is also made on RCEP. During RCEP, India failed to get the bargain which it wants to have. That shows the poor diplomatic skills of India, and India needs to build its capacities. Coming to Gilgit-Baltistan region, Pakistan recently conducted elections over there and also declared it as a province. In this case, China-Pakistan economic corridor, this is going to bound these countries much closer to each other, posing a double challenge for India. These are the issues discussed over here. Next is another bailout. This is about Lakshmi Vilas Bank, on which RBI has imposed a moratorium. Initially, RBI took prompt corrective action, but it failed to correct the bank, and the NPAs of the bank are close to 25%. Don't think that this is the fate of only Lakshmi Vilas Bank. Entire financial sector is on the verge of NPA crisis. The major reason being COVID-19. COVID-19 is not just a health crisis, it is also an economic crisis. Many of the businesses are seeing the losses like never before. Because of this, they can spill into a crisis which can increase the NPAs of the banks. So, the biggest challenge before the RBI and the government today is ensuring the COVID-19 do not spill into a crisis into finance sector. If the finance sector is collapsed, entire economy is going to be collapsed, and keeping that plan in mind is essential today. Next is India facing a two-front threat? Here two-front threat refers to war threat from both China and also Pakistan. So let us see carefully. Pakistan and China are bound together like never before. Initially, India's diplomatic effort was to disentangle both these countries. So Nehru tried for disentanglement so that a two-front danger can be avoided. With the CPEC, these countries are bound together like never before, and disentanglement is not a choice before us. So the way forward is to face this two-front threat. In this case, the militarization and military expenditure is bound to increase. The militarization of line of actual control is going to increase. Till date, we thought that line of actual control can be dealt diplomatically. Today, it appears almost as impossible. And we have to see the Pakistan problem as part of larger problem of China or larger China problem. So Pakistan becomes a smaller problem if the issues with China gets escalated. And added to that, if India's and China's strengths are assessed, India has got a great strength in high altitude warfare. Added to that, we also have strong presence in the Indian Ocean. But China has greater technology, hardware power and software power, and this has to be considered. And if Pakistan adds to China, obviously Pakistan also has high altitude warfare and necessary abilities. So India-China trade-off created a new normal in international relations today. And Indo-Pacific has become a norm or a reality, and Quad has become a strong pole in global politics today. So in these cases, the two-phase or double standoff, two-front threat, whatever we call it as, is a new reality for India. Reading the Bihar verdict. After 15 years being the chief minister, what Nitish Kumar achieved in Bihar? The answer to this is still there is highest poverty, migration of the workforce. And his answer is Bihar being a landlocked state, it is not possible for such a development as like southern states. Punjab and Haryana are also landlocked, but they are prosperous. So many of the developmental issues and governance issues are not well addressed, and most important among that is corruption. In spite of this, why the people have voted Mr. Nitish Kumar back to power? The answer to this is lack of effective opposition. And the second point which has been stated is invincibility of BJP. Can we believe in this invincibility philosophy in democracy? Let us give the example from Indian history itself. Indira Gandhi appeared as invincible to everyone, but a strong opposition in the form of strong leadership from Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Morarji Desai, Jayaprakash Narayan, everything was able to crumple this myth of invincibility. So what is missing in India today is a strong opposition. So this strong opposition is vacant, and we have to see who can take up that particular position. Next is terror funding. Saeed gets 10 years in jail. Remember, Mr. Saeed is the mastermind behind Mumbai attacks. He is the chief of Lashkar-e-Taiba. In these circumstances, FATF citing Mr. Hafiz Saeed and Masood Azhar being outside, still continuing the Pakistan in grey list, and it is stated to be one of the reasons for financial woes of Pakistan. To please FATF and to get out of grey list, probably Pakistan took this particular action. Next is, Digital India is now a new way of life, Prime Minister. And data protection law. And India has to become a large data economy, IT Minister. Let us see these two articles. Today we have information revolution. And this information revolution is very different from industrial revolution. In information revolution, disruption can happen at any point of time. We need not have a first comer advantage or mighty will rule that may not apply in the information revolution. Anyone with a new idea can cause the disruption. So that's why innovation has a greater role in information revolution. And the second most important point the Prime Minister is talking about is lack of geographical boundaries. The markets are getting unified like never before, and added to that, the data is a new fuel of the old economy, and India is the largest generator of the data. So, digital ecosystem is built on data, and making India the largest data economy is the future which we are looking at. Here, Prime Minister has spoke about one scheme that is called Swamvita scheme. The Swamvita scheme is to digitalize all the land records. We want to take the photographs of the land records with the use of drones, etc. So this Swamvita is being exposed or told by the Prime Minister as an important scheme in Digital India. So we need to remember for our prelims. Anyone can be arrested now by being branded as urban Naxal. What is the word we are talking about? It is urban Naxal. So this word urban Naxal has become a metaphor for a person to be arrested on the claims of supporting the Naxalism in India. So many of the civil society activists are being put behind the bars, and by calling them as urban Naxals. Second, they are being deprived of the basic human freedoms and liberties. And most of the resources, if you carefully observe, these are coming from extortion to the Naxalites. And police also have certain bottlenecks. The major bottlenecks are interstate operations, and the next is center state coordination, intelligence gathering. If you observe Ganapati, the most important person in Naxal movement, his photograph is also not available with the police till date. That's a great intelligence failure. So these are all the challenges to the police operations. And finally, we can see Naxalism is not a law and order problem. It is the simplification or microscopic view of the problem. Naxalism is more a socio-economic developmental problem. These have to be understood. What are Sri Lanka's prospects with RCEP in India's absence? When we see this, Sri Lanka has two major challenges over here. One is, it has no consistency with regard to the free trade agreements. So we need to have a consistent stand. Next is competitive advantage which ASEAN economies have is missing in Sri Lanka. These are articles for today. This is Dr. Rambabu for Law Excellence.